today we are talking about getting attention. This is one of the topics that was requested in last year's poll because it was mentioned as the problem that people tend to have most often in aviation marketing is the people that we are trying to sell to are so busy, it's really hard to get them on the phone. It's really hard to get their attention for even 5 minutes at a time, much less the amount of time that it takes to explain a complex product or service. So this webinar is for you if you need to get the attention of busy prospects. This webinar is for you if your product is better than your competitors, but it takes some time and attention to explain it. And this webinar is for you if you have great material on your website, but you are not getting enough traffic to it. If any of those things are true, please raise your hand. If none of those things are true, you can teach this webinar or you can feel free to spend this hour in some other way, because these are the problems that we're planning on solving in the next hour. So please do two things. First, make sure that you have a pen. And if you have printed out the handouts, that's great. You may want to take some notes while we're going through this. The other thing is you want to make sure that your phone is turned off and all of your other windows are closed. This is the very best use of an hour that you could possibly come up with if you have those problems that we talked about. And a lot of aviation companies and sales and marketing professionals in the aviation industry do have these problems. And if we can get those solved today, in this hour, that's our promise to you, but it will not happen if you are distracted and not paying attention. So we're talking about attention, so we need yours to solve the problem. So what we'll cover today: why is visual content so powerful? How do I turn my text material into great visuals? How do I use those visuals to get people's attention? And if you do this right, you will get more attention from your key prospects, and that attention will be measurable in clicks, likes, retweets, shares, and traffic, and most importantly, in sales. Now, it used to be when we were focusing on print and trade shows and things like that, that we had a very squishy way of measuring how much attention we were getting. But the nice thing about a lot of the digital marketing that we're doing nowadays is that we can test a lot of things online, and then we know they're going to work offline as well, right? Yep. All right. Okay, so questions so far. I know we're just getting started, but we want to make sure that we're covering what people think is important. Go ahead and type questions into the window, and John will be facilitating those for us.
Somebody says they noticed you said measurable and likes and so on.
Okay.
So how do likes relate to sales?
Okay. Well, there is a life cycle of customer involvement, which, a lot of different books will define it with slightly different terminology, but generally speaking, it's attention, interest, desire, and action, right? So if you get somebody's attention first, and then you get their interest, and then you get their desire, which they often will promote by using likes and other things. They'll like your page because they desire to get more of your materials and things like that. And then action is when they actually make the purchase. So there's lots of different versions of that customer life cycle, but I would say that a like is earlier in the life cycle than buy. Obviously, you can't pay your rent with likes, but often the likes are a preceding measure of how many people are involved with your material online, and that is more likely to show up as a purchase later in their life after they have gotten further down the road and had more involvement with you. Great. Other questions?
Yeah. It says, are you going to talk? Well, let me just say, which social media are you going to talk about? Assuming you're going to talk about social media.
We always talk about social media.
Yeah, I mean, he types like I do.
Okay. Yes, of course we're going to talk about social media, and the specific social media that we're going to talk about in some detail are LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and I think those are the three that we're going to cover in detail. But A lot of what we're going to talk about is applicable to all of them, but we're going to go into some specifics about LinkedIn because it is the most used among the aviation professionals we surveyed, and Facebook because it has some tools that nobody else does.
What a segue.
What a segue.
Into the next question.
Right.
So, are you going to talk about software/tools?
Software and tools, yes. We are going to talk about graphics tools. We're going to talk about some of the ways to make this easier, workflow and other kinds of things as well.
Unless I don't think anybody's typing, so
all right.
Continue.
Wow, we covered all the questions in the first section. That's fantastic. Okay, so first of all, why is visual content important to get attention? And is this a new thing?
Well, I guess the obvious answer to that is in front of you.
Exactly. So this is from a cave painting in Lascaux, France. My very favorite class in high school. If you don't know this already, you probably will have guessed it from some other webinars that we've done, was art history. And this is the very first picture in the art history book. The earliest known artistic rendering made by humans, or whatever came before humans. It was dated to be about 17,000 years old. So obviously, we don't know what the purpose of this was, whether it was an advertisement, whether it was informative, to tell people there's horses in this valley.
Or a logbook.
Yeah, there's a logbook, a record of a particular activity. We really don't know what the purpose of this was, but obviously it was made by humans with the intent of getting the attention of other humans, right? That's about the only thing that we can really gather about it. A little later than that, in the 1930s, if we zoom forward several tens of thousands of years, a lot of people think, well, literature and text is really king, and it used to be said that content is king. And even in literature, most of the great literary artists that we know of drew before they wrote. They drew outlines, they drew concepts, they drew things, that evoked what they were trying to write about. And even though the technology at the time, in fact, J.R.R. Tolkien, there was an article pretty recently about a lot of his illustrations were never used because it was too expensive to produce books with a lot of illustrations in them. So they produced his books, The Lord of the Rings in particular, and The Hobbit, without illustrations or with very few of them. And a lot of the illustrations that J.R. Tolkien did himself are just coming to light now. So I think it's really pretty fantastic that thought usually takes the form of something visual before it becomes verbal. It's almost a process in your mind that takes place without a lot of work happening. Before you go into the effort of actually writing down the words, you get the concepts out often by writing or drawing or by seeing a picture. Then you attract enough interest to become interested in the words, right?
So that means you agree that a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, that's one of the oldest cliches in the book, but it's absolutely true, don't you think?
So what does that mean about moving pictures where you've got 30 frames per second going by? Is that like 30,000 words per second?
Billions and billions of words, right? Okay, so I'm going to do something that may break this whole webinar, but I think it's worth trying. And that is we're going to watch a 1 minute and 30-second commercial. This is probably the most attention-getting ad of all time. That's arguable, but it is possible. So let's see if we can do this without breaking the internet here.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification methods. For the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, ready to make bloom, secure from the pests of any contributory force. Purification of laws is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves tired, and we pride in them doing their own revolution. We shall prevail. January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Okay, so hopefully that worked, and you were able to see that video. Um, some history, I think, is important to add here. The reason that this is so important is because in 1984, the computers were seen as the domain of industry. You know, they were seen as business entities and commercial entities and government entities, and they were seen with a lot of suspicion by human beings. The term personal computer was still an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
It was not something that was.
Computers were not synonymous with Big Brother watching.
They were synonymous with Big Brother
That's
watching.
what I mean.
Exactly. So what they did, and this was Chiat Day and Ridley Scott, actually, this was one of the first things that he did before he became a big movie producer, was to evoke these images. And you'll notice there was not a lot of words in that, other than the mantra that, the guy was deliberately mumbling. It was pretty indistinct. But it was not about the text, it was about the images. And that ad actually was almost nixed. They almost didn't run it. And they only ran it once, and it was during the third quarter of the Super Bowl in 1984.
Actually, it was nixed. But Jobs and Wozniak decided, screw you guys on the board. We paid for it ourselves. They paid for it themselves and ran it anyway.
Exactly. So, they were very worried about the reaction that people were going to get. They thought that they thought that industry would really dislike it, which they did. And a lot of nowadays it's not so unusual to have an ad that is really striking because I guess the ice has been broken and so on. But the interesting thing is they took some imagery from an idea, and that was really all about. You'll notice there was nothing about the computer. They didn't talk about the user interface, which was revolutionary. They didn't talk about the fact that it was small, which was revolutionary. They didn't talk about the fact that it was inexpensive by other terms, which was also revolutionary. So there was a lot that they could have said about the product, but they said nothing about the product. All they wanted to do was gather interest, and they wanted to talk about what?
The name of the product.
No.
Oh.
The whole ad was about their customers.
Oh, yeah.
It was not about the computer. It was about the customer. So, I think that was really revolutionary in a whole bunch of different ways. And, the whole 1984 theme and everything else was just brilliantly done. And not every ad that we do is going to knock it out of the park that way, but there's a lot that we can learn from an ad that's even that old. So here's another really old one. This was Wells Rich Green Agency in 1977. How many of you recognize that? If you do, raise your hand. One of the most iconic pieces of advertising ever. And, it's obviously text, but even just a small graphic element, if you say, I love New York in text, like we have on the title of the slide, versus the graphic illustration of that, it hits a different part of your brain and it gets processed much more quickly than the text does, doesn't it, John?
Yes, but, it sticks around even today. You see those things and you say, oh, brother.
You don't like New York.
Well, that's got
you
nothing
don't
to do
love
with it.
New York.
No.
Okay, that's all right. But it was a very effective advertisement. So, and it's because of the graphics that really set it off and things. So now let's get into some aviation examples. Finally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is actually really, really good copywriting, but most people, when they see really, really good copy, they tend not to notice it unless it is supported by really, really good graphics. So the fact that they used an aviation image and, multi-grade has multiple benefits, and that's not just positive spin. What this does is it draws your eye to each of the bullet items, right, around the propeller. And, this gets a lot more people to read it because of the graphics than there would be if there were no graphics, right?
Yes.
Right, and that's a print ad. So a lot of the elements that we're going to be talking about today will really help any media, and they will really help even if you already have fantastic writing, which we hope you do, right?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. Another thing that happens a lot is when people are scrolling through their Facebook or their LinkedIn or their, whatever it is that they go through every day, usually in the morning while they're drinking coffee, some things will grasp your attention and capture your attention for a few seconds, even just long enough to stop and go, wow, who is that company? And in this case, this is just a best office ever image, which really captures the attention of some people who happen to have that office or want that office, right?
Uh-huh.
Other things about this is it's really high contrast. So this is on a Facebook page, which is mostly white and gray. And of course, they used a dark blue image with the high contrast white, bold type. So, they did a lot of things right here. But, of course, your image or your eye is drawn to who is that company, and wow, they agree with me. We have something in common. So once again, you're hitting the emotions of people, and you're talking about your customers. You're not talking about your product or service yet, right?
True.
True. Okay. All right. So questions about why we need visuals. We haven't talked about any of the how or why yet. We've just talked about the what, right?
There's one or two here.
Okay.
So if pictures are better, are videos better than that? However, I have been thinking that what I've heard is that videos can't be indexed by search engines, can they?
Well, images and videos, that's true. The search engines can't reach in and see what the topic is about, but actually search engines give preferential treatment to videos as long as they are tagged properly, right?
Uh-huh.
So what we mean by that is, on YouTube, when you publish a video, or on anything else, usually when you publish a video, there are some tags and some descriptions and titles that are required, before you publish that video. And so if you place your keywords and, really good keywords into those titles and descriptions and keywords, then videos are actually, I would say, more effective than text. And images the same way. You can tag your images just as easily.
So that sort of segues into the next question.
Oh, wow. You guys must be really coordinating your questions. I don't know if you're talking to each other, but if you're all sitting in the same room and talking to each other while you're asking these questions, that's really cool.
Can images be used on their own, or do you have to have a lot of text on the page?
That is a good question. And ideally, I guess, if you were to create the perfect search engine bait, right? And, again, this is not a search engine class, but it's important to talk about in relation to video and images. So the perfect search engine bait would be about an 800-word blog post or an 800-word piece of text with subtitles that have your keywords in it and closely related keywords to the ones that you're using. It would have images, 2 or 3 images, and it would also have a video. So, if you were to create the search engine's dream of what would work best for the ideal piece of search engine optimized content, it would be a web page or a blog post that has about 800 words of text, a video, and 3 images. But nobody's going to do that every single time, right? I mean, that would be crazy. So, whatever you do want to make sure that you're using your ideal keywords with your images and that you're using a pretty hefty description whenever you have the opportunity to do that. Cool?
Okay.
All right. More questions?
Nope, that was the last one.
All right, cool. You guys are smart today. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some text content and we are going to create some visual content out of it. And then I'm going to show you what you can do with that visual content to attract more attention to the page and get more people to get your point more quickly, and also to expose them to an idea that they otherwise might overlook because it is just text. So this is a page on ABCI's website that's getting some traffic, but not a heck of a lot. It's not one of our very best pages. We actually just picked this out of, by throwing darts at our archive page, and took one that was kind of a middle of the road. It's a good article. Fear can be useful, the pre-sales call checklist. And this was about an experience that I had where I didn't really want to make a sales call. And then as it turned out, after doing some digging and things like that, there was probably a really good reason that I didn't make that sales call. And then I put together a pre-sales call checklist so that, number one, I was not going to make calls that I shouldn't be making. And two, when I did make sales calls, I'd make sure that all of the lights were green for that circumstance or that situation. So it's an experience that I think would be really helpful for a lot of people who find themselves in a similar situation where they may be nervous about making a sales call and they don't really know why, but they can't put their finger on it, and they're beating themselves up because they're just not doing what they're supposed to. But, as it turns out, there may be a good reason for that. So what I did is I took this article and then said, what can I do to illustrate this article? So number one, you start with the feeling, right? So that 1984 Macintosh ad was all about who are your customers and what do they feel and how are you going to address what they feel? And so we put together this ad, afraid to make sales calls, put the emphasis on the emotion. So this grabs you a whole heck of a lot better than this does, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you only have 5 seconds, this isn't going to grab you, but this will. So, it's an illustration of an emotion. Afraid to make sales calls, this may be why. Okay. And then you'll also notice this is square and it's impactful, it's high contrast, very colorful. We use red in the image. All of those things are elements that tend to attract attention pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So there's an illustration. Another thing that I can do with what's in that article is I talk about in that article the Sandler sales success diagram. And, that's actually 3 exploded triangles. And this is one of the exploded triangles that explodes into 3 more triangles. But talking about attitude, how do you feel about, and, they talk about yourself, your market, or your company. And so, I talk about a lot of the different things that might be a problem with either maybe you have a really crappy voice that day, because you've got allergies. I mean, that's happened to me in the last little bit. Maybe about your market, you feel like, well, maybe this isn't the ideal customer for this product. Or your company, maybe there is a reason that, one of your suppliers may not be able to come through if you get this contract. So, as it turned out, after doing some digging, I found out that one of our suppliers, and I didn't really have any hard evidence of this at the time that I was going through this process, but I didn't have a really good feeling about one of our suppliers. And then after doing some subsequent research and things like that, I found out that one of our suppliers was not being completely truthful about their capabilities. And so if we had made this sale, we would have been a little uncomfortable or working a lot harder than we thought we would, or possibly changing suppliers midstream. So sometimes you get those feelings because your intuition processes information faster than your intellect, or faster than the evidence comes in. So this is a diagram that kind of explains how I went through making this checklist. Here are the things that I want to consider, and here are the things that I want to do a gut check on before I make a sales call. So that's a diagram. And of course, we have the illustration. Now we have the diagram. Another thing I can do with that information is what we call a pull quote. And this is the easiest thing in the world to do, is you read through your article and you figure out, what are the most important words in that article, what really captures what you're trying to say. So if you only have 2 seconds, what do you really want to capture people's attention with? And in this case, it's postpone or cancel the sales call. So, if the answer to any of these questions is no, postpone or cancel the sales call. There's no point in wasting our time or a client's time on a sale we won't win, or even worse, on a project we do win that causes problems, right?
Been there and done that.
Been there and done that. So, right, exactly. And that's where this checklist came in. But pull quotes are the easiest thing in the world to do when you've got a lot of text and you need to make it visually attractive, is look for the keywords and how can you illustrate those keywords using typography, using color. Once again, we're using high contrast. We're also using our branding colors, the royal blue, the black and white ABCI logo in the corner and everything else. That's another thing that you'll definitely want to do, is make sure that all of your graphics have some similar elements. And we went through an entire hour last month, actually 2 hours, on branding. So we won't go into that again today, but that gives you a basis for, how you're going to format your pull quotes.
So for the rest of us who don't understand this marketing speakeasy you have, those highlighted red letters are what you're calling a pull quote.
No, the whole thing is a pull quote, actually.
See, that's why I'm asking.
Okay, thank you for doing that. Okay, let me define the term. Pull quote just means a quote that is pulled from the text. And, in a lot of magazines and things like that, you'll see that they pull them into a sidebar or, put them in the middle of the page in big italic letters and beautiful typography.
And that's fine and all, but your emphasis was on the wrong syllable and led me to believe the letters in red was what you were talking about.
No. Okay, exactly. Well, that could be a pull quote from the pull quote.
See?
Okay, so we have a meta pull quote.
Uh-huh.
Okay, but the whole thing is basically just
I got it.
section of text that you want to highlight. And, this is a piece that we can pull out and make a visual out of. Now, I did not have the context really to do a graph, but I put a graph in here. This one is actually from BDN's latest survey, and this is about the respondents to one of their surveys about aviation purchasing decisions and things like that. So it's good information, but it doesn't have anything to do with the article we were just talking about. But one thing you want to ask yourself when you're looking at your text or your content is, can I make a graph? And one thing about this graph, and actually about a lot of the graphs that we have seen, is that they are trying to often communicate too much information at one time. So the most powerful graphics are ones that only convey one idea at a time. So on one hand, and this one's trying to convey two. So if it were me, I would have simplified this into one thing per chart, and I probably would have created two separate graphs, one about business aviation and the other about general aviation, and had the main point of the graph be what was the age of each of the respondents to this survey, because you really only want to convey one piece of information at a time, and the other information should be supporting, right?
True.
And this isn't too bad. This is actually conveys the same stuff, and you could say that it's supporting information. But if I'm only interested in business aviation, I only want to see the red. And if I'm only interested in general aviation, I only want to see the blue. And it could be made more powerful if it were simpler. So almost always, and this is a rule you probably want to write down next to this slide in your handouts, only convey one piece of information at a time, because the simpler a graph or chart is, the more powerful it is.
And it sticks.
Yeah. And you do not want to prove how smart you are by doing these kinds of things. You want to prove a single point, right?
And that's usually not it.
Right, exactly. And, once you have earned someone's attention, you can always present them with another graph. But, the most common problem that we see in aviation marketing is people trying to convey too much information in too little space, or, too much information into a single interaction. and it loses people. Nobody will ever tell you that they don't understand you, and they're busy and they're distracted, and it's not that they're stupid. And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to insult my customers. You're not being insulting, you're being respectful of their time, by giving them really, really simple information that they can understand right off the top without having to work really hard to do that, because they won't, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So questions about the kinds of visuals that you can make. And once again, just to kind of go over those, we talked about illustrations, especially emotional illustrations. We talked about diagrams where you're illustrating a concept. We talked about pull quotes, and we talked about graphs. So those are the four, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
This is sort of encompasses all of that.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Which or how do you relate demographics to which or what type of visual to use?
Okay.
Or can you?
Yes, you can. Let me start with kind of a blanket statement, and that is that you are never too old for graphics. A lot of people think, well, the younger the demographic, the more illustrations I need. Kind of like they're thinking about the little golden books or whatever, the older the kid is, the fewer illustrations and the more words there are. That is not true of adults. Grown-ups love illustrations just as much as kids do. I would say that, if you're going to go with a really traditional, and if we talk about the business aviation demographic, we're talking about 45 plus, we're talking about male, we're talking about college educated, like 16 plus years of education, we're talking about military experience, higher than the average population, right? So we've talked about that a lot. But that, if you're hitting that target demographic, you are not going to use pink, right? You're not going to use fluffy, you're not going to use pastels, you're not going to use, a lot of the things that are seen as more feminine. Or the things that you're looking for is nice, crisp, clean graphics, high contrast. Often the older the demographic is, the more high contrast they appreciate, and so on. So, there's a lot to be said about that, but in general, good graphics are good graphics, and your entire spectrum of potential audiences is going to.
So wait, you're saying the older, the higher contrast? What are you trying to say? They get old and their eyesight goes bad, or what?
Well, actually, there is something to be said for that, because you actually lose, and I'm not sure if it's the rods or the cones. I'm sure the eye doctor could probably tell you this, but you actually lose some color distinction over the age of 30. About every couple of years they lose a little bit of, how, and this is also a men and women thing. Women can actually see more colors than men can. So, for women, there's
sorry I asked the
peach,
question.
mango, orange, all of those shades of orange. For men, there's just orange, like the Crayola 8 box instead of the Crayola 32 box, right?
True.
I'm not trying to be sexist here. I'm just telling you.
So anyway, let's go to the next question.
Okay, fine. Okay.
How do you make charts?
How do you make charts? We'll actually talk about that a little bit more in the next section, but there are some really great tools. Actually, you can start with Microsoft Excel. It has some chart wizards in it that make some pretty decent charts, right?
They do.
Yeah. So, and then there's also a bunch of other tools and things that you are probably already using, and there are also some free tools and others on the web that make a little bit more sophisticated tools. And you can also use some services if you have some really great charts that really prove your point and you want to use them on everything. Then it's worth getting a graphics designer, a really good designer, to create them for you in a format that is going to look really fantastic.
Unless you've done a lot of graphs or charts, don't wait till the last minute, because when you chart data out of a spreadsheet, it doesn't always look like you want it to.
You think? Right.
And you may want to change the X and Y axes and scales and labels and all kinds of things, so the charts come out looking what you want.
Exactly. Right. And that's something, actually, there's a lot of really good tutorials on YouTube, some little 2-minute tutorials on how to create a pie chart or how to do X, Y, or Z using specific tools and things like that. So, but we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. And also I can send you some really great stuff after the show in the show notes. So, all right, how to use visuals to get attention. One thing that most of us have, I think a lot of the folks in the room that I know are using WordPress and are using blogs and other kinds of things. If that's true, raise your hand, just so I kind of get an idea. Okay, great. So some of you are using blogs and you're using WordPress. There are some formats that are available to you in most of the templates in WordPress that let you use featured images in your blog. And what we found is that we get a lot more traffic to the articles or posts that have a featured image. So, I mean, this is just like in social media. It's proven pretty much across the board. Every time you have a good image as preceding an article or any other type of content, you're going to get more clicks, you're going to get more likes, you're going to get more shares, and you're going to get more time. People spend more time on that piece of content. So you can use featured images in WordPress to highlight the pages on your blog that you really want to draw attention to. So that's really underused, and I'd recommend that everybody do that. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on LinkedIn because it is the most popular and most respected social media used in the aviation industry, right?
True.
Even John uses LinkedIn, right?
Watch it.
John's not a fan of social media, but LinkedIn somehow gets a pass. It's seen as an exception from the whole social media genre, right? So you can use visuals to get attention on your posts on LinkedIn and on your updates on LinkedIn. You can use a great visual for your cover photo for your company page. This is something that most of you are already doing, I hope. Some of you may not be, but that is very important as well. So I'll show you how to do some of these things or where you do some of these things. If you don't know the difference between a status update and a post, let me just show you really quickly. This is on your LinkedIn homepage. When you log in, you'll see you have the opportunity to update your status, just like you do in Facebook. Not very many people do, but I would recommend that you do this because it's a really easy way to make a post here, just the same as you do in Facebook. If you're using something like Hootsuite or MeetEdgar or any of those other things, you can also post from that as well to your status updates.
By the way, just because I don't use social media,
except for LinkedIn,
does not mean that corporately speaking, you should.
Right. Agreed.
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Exactly. Okay. So update your status, and you can do this fairly frequently. And actually, if you're using one of those automated tools, it takes very little more time to add LinkedIn to one of those things. And the other thing that you can do is publish a post, which is this other item here on your homepage where you can publish they call it a long form post, and it goes into what they call LinkedIn Pulse, which is seen as more of an in-depth sort of an article and things like that. So those are two options that you have. And, I'd recommend that you do the status updates fairly frequently, and you do posts at least once a week because they do get quite a bit of attention, and LinkedIn is a great place to get lots of good referrals and traffic to your site. And I think it's almost always in our top 5 sources of business, sources of new business, sources of referrals is LinkedIn. So on your LinkedIn company page, you'll notice here, normally when you post an update on your LinkedIn company page, it's going to use the logo of your company, like the one on the bottom here. But you also have the option to publish a thumbnail image, and you'll notice the one that has the thumbnail image, and this is just a little kid's drawing, and that's what the story is about. Is somebody who a little kid that wrote a letter to an airline and got a response. But anyway, it's a little kid's drawing, and it got a lot more attention than just the company logo. So you do want to take advantage of those thumbnail images as much as you can as well, because those do get more attention. All right, we do have a question. What is the difference between a status update and a post? Let me go back to that page really quickly. And that was right here. So update status is almost like in Facebook, where you just do a really quick little paragraph and you do an image. Publishing a post is, it gives you a whole page. So you get a bigger image, you get, you can put links to other things, you can embed videos, you can do other things like that. So it's just a lot more, it's more like a blog post than like a Facebook update. So, those are the two kinds of things that you can do there. All right, so Facebook ads. I didn't recommend these until about 6 months ago, but there are some really cool things that you can do with Facebook ads to develop what they call custom audiences. And there actually are a lot more people than admit to it on Facebook who are in business aviation. So, some of the things that you can do are upload a customer list. So you can upload your list from Infusionsoft or from your CRM, and it will do its best to match those to Facebook users. So let's say you have a list from the AMMC conference last week, and you have a list of people who came to your booth. You could actually upload that into Facebook and advertise only to those people that visited your booth last week at the AMMC conference. Now, there is no other way that I know of that you can actually do that except to maybe send them a postcard or send them an individual email. But they're going to be, there are so few people doing this in the aviation industry that they are going to be just absolutely blown away that you put an MMC ad or related ad, thanks for stopping by our booth, and here's a little message that's specifically for you in their Facebook feed. They're going to be absolutely stunned by that. So, that's really effective. Another thing you can do is target people who have visited specific web pages. So, for example, we have a page on podcasts, done for you podcasts. Now, the people that have visited that specific page are getting Facebook ads delivered to their Facebook feed, because I know what they're specifically interested in. They're not just interested in generally aviation marketing, but specifically in podcasts. So, that really is much more powerful than a lot of other things that people do. So those are a couple of the things that I recommend with Facebook, where you can put your images in front of people in a really effective way.
And just for fun,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was an article on a very widely read newspaper today that says of the 2 billion people that use Facebook daily, 73% of them use it as their go-to, and I'll use the term news media.
Right.
And that ought to scare you.
Right. Well,
and be a good thing as well, because that means they're out there. So the demographics are good. You can retarget ads. You can do all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And they're spending a lot of time on Facebook.
Yes,
as well.
they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, even a lot of people that would not admit to it are actually spending a lot of time on these social media. So I would test anything before you jump to conclusions. Again, it's not about what we like. It's about what our customers actually do.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So retargeted ads. And this is actually on USA Today. There was an article, is personal branding still a thing, that I went to go look at. And I had just been on Dreamstime's site researching for this article, where to find great stock photography, right? So, of course, I go on to USA Today and start reading an article, and an ad pops up for Dreamstime, which is a stock photography site. How did they know?
Because they're smart.
Because they're smart, right. Actually, there are a lot of retargeting services that are reasonably priced now. They used to be completely out of the budgets of most aviation companies because they were for really large retail organizations and things like that. But they've come down to the point where you can spend as little as about $100 a month on retargeted ads. And, that's something that, of course, ABCI can do for you as well, is manage your digital marketing. But you can use those fantastic images that you've created and place them in some of these sectors where they are going to be targeted to people who have visited your website. And you can set up the rules however is most effective and things like that. But the point is that your ad can be on USA Today, Wall Street Journal,
and it looks like you contacted those people and had them put it out there for you.
Right. And so few people are doing it in the aviation industry that, it is very effective so far. And right, there is a question about ad blocking software. Thank you for that. That is a concern. But in a lot of cases, you can set it up so you only pay for the number of actual impressions, or you only pay for the number of actual conversions. So if people are using ad block software, then it's not going to reach some of the people that you want to reach, but then you're not going to pay for it anyway, right? So
True.
Who cares? I mean, you do care because, obviously if you want to reach a certain demographic and they happen to be high security kind of folks, like military contractors and things like that, a high percentage of those are going to have ad block software, but some of them won't.
Or they'll have other means to prevent that from getting to their computer.
Exactly. So, they may have that on their work computer, but then on their iPad or whatever, they probably won't have ad block software. So, there are ways of reaching those people. And you also don't pay for clicks, or if it's a concern, you want to make sure that the rules are set up so that you're not paying for images that people are not seeing. Okay. Print. Once again, you can take a fantastic ad and turn it into a postcard. Most people think their aircraft records are backed up, and most people are wrong. That's an attention-getting statement, and using an image to get people's attention and get them to flip that postcard over to at least look at what is on the other side. So once again, people sort their mail over the garbage can, but printed materials actually do have a much higher response rate than anything digital. They are expensive in the sense that you have to pay for printing and you have to pay for postage, but it's worth it for the credibility. We always like to use at least one printed item in every campaign if we can talk our clients into it, because it is so much more effective in terms of credibility, and it makes all of the other media that you're using 1,000 times more credible if you can include at least one print item, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so video. YouTube is the second largest search engine right behind Google. That does change every once in a while, so depending on what time of day it is today, if you happen to look that up, that may not be true. But at the time that we were doing the research for this, it was the second largest search engine. That's been a fairly stable statistic for a while. Almost 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube, or on YouTube every single day. Facebook, Instagram, and Amazon are getting into video. I don't know if you saw, there's a recent news item that Amazon is one of the world's largest servers of video with their Amazon Prime service. They're trying to compete with the cable networks, but they're also going to allow individuals to share video on Amazon, and they have, the only rules that they really have for it is it has to be HD video, and they also have some other parameters, but they're not terribly hard parameters. So people like you and me could publish documentaries, we could publish advertising. We could publish all kinds of things on Amazon as well. And, a lot of people ask me, should I publish our videos on YouTube and then link to them from Facebook and link to them from Instagram and link to them from Amazon, or should I publish it natively on each of those platforms? And I would say, if you've got a really good video that you want to be seen and you don't care as much about tracking as you do about results, then put it natively on each of those platforms, because like on Facebook, if you have a link to a YouTube video, it's not going to be as obvious as if you implanted it or uploaded it directly into Facebook, where it's actually going to play the video even while people are scrolling, and then they see the motion and they're more likely to click on it. So that is video. All right, tools for creating visual content. There is a lot that we could do. We could spend an hour on each of these, but we're not going to. So
Good.
Yeah, exactly. So thing number one is your cell phone. A lot of our clients, we really advise them to just take pictures of everything, especially the charter guys. Take pictures of every place you go. Take pictures of the airport sign. Here's where we are this afternoon. Take pictures of the weather. Take pictures of, deer on the airport property. Take pictures of everything, because a lot of those are going to make really fantastic visual posts or ads. One of my favorite tools is Canva, because it is quick and cheap to create branded images very quickly. They have a free version, then they also have a fairly inexpensive version that has some branded templates that you can set up once, and then you can use them over and over again, so it saves you a whole lot of time. Another one of our favorite tools is PictoChart, which lets you make infographics in kind of a fun way, and those are really effective on some social media. Keynote and PowerPoint, weirdly enough, actually make pretty good images. There's some graphic tools on PowerPoint where you can create some relationship diagrams and other kinds of things. I really like Omnigraffle if you're a Mac user. I didn't put that on the list because I'm not sure, most of these things are agnostic. But, if you are a Mac user, I really like Omnigraffle. It's a lot of fun. There is a tool called Prezi, which also makes slightly more animated presentations. And that is really good for making short little 2-minute promo videos for a product or for a particular idea. And those little 2-minute videos, they take forever to make. You think, oh, well, it's a 2-minute video, but it's going to take you a week to get it exactly perfect and get it the way you want it. But Prezi is a great tool to do that, because it lets you embed a lot of different animations and other things that are a lot of fun without being a programmer or being terribly involved with that. Photoshop is, I have a love-hate relationship with Photoshop. Every time I open it, I end up spending hours and hours, which is why I hate it. I hate opening it because I know I'm going to be committed for a long time.
What that means is she wants me to do it.
Exactly. And John does a great job with Photoshop because he is so particular, which is wonderful. So he makes really good detailed. So if you really need to make something polished, Photoshop is the state of the art, and it is the industry standard. I think it's the gold-plated graphics software. And Excel actually does a pretty decent job of creating some graphs to start with, and then you can always put them in another tool to make them fancy, schnazzy, different colors, different effects, other kinds of things. So those are fun. Where can I get great stock photography? We had talked about the illustrations and the emotion type of ads and things like that. It's really pretty simple to find good stock photography nowadays, and it's fairly inexpensive to get a subscription to Dreamstime or iStock Photos. Another one of our favorite places to get good material is the Envato Marketplace, and they have Video Hive, where you can get little video loops and other things that are stock video, which are kind of fun for different advertisements. Graphic River is where you can get good graphic illustrations and other kinds of things. And then PhotoDune is their photo repository. So all of that is in the Envato marketplace. Incidentally, they also have great resources for music and other things that you can use, and also Creative Commons, where you can get things that are in the public domain, so you don't have to worry about that. Just make sure that whatever you use, you document where you got it and how you paid for it, and so on, so that if you ever are challenged on the use of an image, you have your documentation in line. So questions about how to use visuals.
Well, since you decided to pick and choose which questions you're going to answer along the way, I have to go back and...
Fine, I know I'm breaking my own rules here, but it made sense at the time that it was asked.
Of course
so
it did.
There you go.
So where
Okay.
can you find, how do I say this? Where can you find the current or the best sizes and templates for images?
Okay, there are constantly changing guidelines for the sizes of images on each of the social media platforms, and those tend to get larger as time goes on. So, it used to be really teeny images on Facebook, and now they're getting larger and larger, and same thing with Twitter and so on. Let me send you a current, if you're in the webinar, I'm going to send you a current list of sizes for each of the social media. There's lots of places where you can grab that online, grab the latest statistics and specifications. So
Facebook ads.
Okay.
You can only have 20% text. How in the world do you figure out what 20% text is, and how do you make effective ads without words?
Okay. Facebook has a tool that you can use it puts a little grid over the ad that you've made, and you can kind of count, and it does kind of a nice job of showing you what 20% is supposed to look like. So that's one way to determine it. How do you make effective ads without words? There's a couple of tricks. One of the tricks is that logos are usually not counted as words. Okay, so if you can use your logo as part of this process, or this is something that you're selling, or whatever, that's not counted as a word. So you can make your logo pretty big, and it won't be counted in that 20%. The other thing is you really need to rely on emotion. So illustration is the best way to do that. Once again, you're not talking about your product, right? You're talking about your customers and the problems they're having. So if you can illustrate frustration or anger or fear or happiness or whatever it is that you want to convey that you are actually selling, because you're never selling your product, right? You're selling an emotion or you're selling a solution. So you want to use pictures of people, always test really, really well, and show somebody in a situation that would be perfect for your product or service, right?
True. Let me suggest that 20% be conservative, because they are like Google in their use of AdWords. If you're ever kicked off of Google, there is no appeal, and there's no appeal to Facebook if they opt to get rid of you because you're not following their order.
Exactly. Facebook is not a democracy. It is a private company, and we do know people who have been kicked off of Facebook for advertising improperly, and they will never be able to use Facebook for advertising unless and until Mark Zuckerberg
changes his mind.
And there is nothing they can do about it. So you do want to be conservative if you ever want to use or leave that possibility open to you. You want to be real conservative about their terms of service. Okay.
That's
it for questions?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So checklist. First thing, how can I show rather than tell? Anytime you need to communicate something, you want this to be the first thing that goes through your head, is how can I show rather than tell this information? Because people process visual information faster than they process words. So, it's just more compelling, it takes less time, all of those things. Create 2 or 3 visuals for every piece of text content. So every time you write a blog post or an article or a sales letter or anything else, you really want to think about what are 2 or 3 visuals that I can use using one of those 4 formats. And once again, those are illustration, diagram, pull quote, and graphs, right? Charts and graphs.
Exactly.
Okay. Put them where they will do the most good. So you want to put them in front of your ideal customer, and you can target them using some of the tricks that we talked about today, right? And you want to reuse them in different formats. So if you have a great image, use it everywhere. It doesn't take that much more effort to put it on all of the other social media, or to put it on all of the other platforms, or to use it in a postcard, or use it in a newsletter, or use it over and over again. Don't worry too much about people seeing your ads too much. That almost never happens in aviation. Our target market is so small, and our budgets we're not Coke or Pepsi, and you never get tired of seeing Coke or Pepsi ads, and they're still effective for them. So don't worry about being too repetitive. All right, so coming up, our members only webinar will work with you on your visuals, charts, graphs, illustrations, diagrams, all of that stuff, and even videos. So those will be fun.
And coming up means not like right now, but later in the week.
Exactly. So what did you learn today? Type it into the chat window, and you can either type it to the group or just to the organizers, and we'll read it without your name. But yeah, we really appreciate you being here. We do have a special offer today. This is not for you. If you are already a class member, we wanted to make sure that we give everybody the full hour of value. But if you're willing to stick around, we do have a special offer that will make it worth your time. If you are a member, you may want to stick around if you want to refer other people. But it's actually just really intended for people who would be great members of our masterclass. So this is not for you if $279 a month would take food off your table. We've all been there at times in our lives and things like that. This is not for you if you are not willing to spend the time and energy to get more customers. And this is not for you if you don't play well with others. There are some folks that do much better with our private consulting than they do with our masterclass, right, John?
Of course.
We won't mention any names.
No.
But yeah, if you are willing to give and get advice, and take advantage of some of the smartest people in the aviation industry who are willing and surprisingly generous with their time and their energy and their brains. We've been really impressed with the quality of the people in the group, and it's one of my favorite things to just hang out with these guys and learn from them. So this class is for you if you sell something. If you don't have an unlimited marketing budget, or you have competitors that can outspend you, so you need to be smart about how you spend your money. That's us, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. If you understand that marketing is not magic, you've given up on looking for the easy button because it doesn't exist. It's going to be work, and you're willing to put in the work. And if you're willing and able to give and take advice, to try new things and to adjust appropriately. Right? So the reason that we built the masterclass was because success is about what you know and who you know. And actually, just between us kids, we're actually rebranding the masterclass in June. So it will be the Aviation Sales and Marketing Insider Circle, because our members told us that nobody likes classes. And also the value that they get from the masterclass has more to do with the networking than it does with the content. So we're still going to be providing the webinars. We're still going to be providing great content and answers to questions and everything else. But we're changing the name and some of the technology that we use to upgrade that and make it more conducive to what our members are telling us.
And emphasizing networking.
Exactly. So we built it to really help our members save time, money, and reputation. All of our consulting members, we found, really would benefit from getting to know each other. And that's really how this started, as we put this together so that they would have an opportunity to interact with each other. So you want to focus on what's relevant You don't want to reinvent hot water if somebody else in the group has already figured it out, right? And you want to learn one thing at a time. We really take one topic each month and do a deep dive. So if last month you learned how to do branding really, really well, and you did a lot of work with that, and this month you learn how to do design of ads really, really well, and that's the one thing that you change about your business. And then next month you take something else and, that's specific. Over a year's time, you're going to get a whole heck of a lot better at sales and marketing and get a whole lot better results. So the outcomes are a more robust, predictable, measurable, and stable marketing system each month, a team of people that you can lean on. A lot of our folks are either marketing experts or aviation experts. Very few are both. Just like John is the aviation expert and I'm the marketing expert of the two of us, and we really lean on each other for a lot of the information that we put together. It's much less expensive than marketing consulting. ABC charges $2,000 a day plus travel and expenses when we do private consulting for aviation companies. So this really is a lot less expensive. Just to introduce you to our dream team, our facilitator is Bert Boda. He is a retired NetJets pilot and very outgoing and friendly. He's very good at facilitating groups of people and making sure everyone feels included. Really good at facilitating those group discussions. Jeff Stadola does our test flights. So if you have an ad you'd like to run by someone before you publish it, he does really blunt reviews. He really is an honest-to-gosh fighter pilot, and he really will shoot you down in flames in a good way, but much better within the group than after having spent a lot of money publishing something, right? Brian Pilcher is our tech guru, and he is very good with CRMs, including Infusionsoft, social media, analytics, a lot of the really nerdy technology involved behind marketing. And we also have our book club where we send you a book each month that is full of bookmarks. So if you don't have time to read the whole book, you can at least read the bookmarks, which are the things that we're highlighting in the group as being very important for aviation folks. John Williams, who is present today, he is our MBA finance nerd and business development guy, and also my husband, which is an admirable accomplishment.
Right.
And me, Paula Williams, I do campaign strategy, organization, copy, and design. It's really my specialty. So you have 1 hour with John and myself each month that you can schedule anytime that's convenient for you, and we work on whatever you want to work on. And that is the cheapest that we offer our services to anybody, right?
True.
Exactly. And so we get to know your company, we get to know your goals and objectives, and we really can help with whatever it is that you want to work on. So, what's included in the masterclass: trusted relationships, interacting with aviation marketing professionals in our private Facebook group, and also in our live webinars. In our members only webinars, we actually do open that up so that other people can talk besides just us, because we have fewer people on the line and we can be a lot more interactive. Get frank feedback on your ads, headlines, images, projects, other things. Our aviation industry calendar includes the topics and events you need to know about. We have members-only events and webinars where we cover one key topic interactively and in depth each month. You get recordings and transcripts of all of our events. You'll never miss a thing, no matter how busy your schedule might be and how much you fly around taking care of your customers. Our book club, we already mentioned, we send you one sales or marketing book each month with discussion and interaction on how they apply or don't apply in the aviation industry. There's a lot of thought that goes on in sales and marketing that assumes you're in retail, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. In fact, your MBA program pretty much focused on retail only, didn't they?
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you can pick up a lot of really bad habits that don't apply or might ruin your credibility if it's not something that will work in aviation. So that's why we like to talk about these things. You get a 1-inch binder each year that has tabs for each month, CD pockets, and everything you need to keep your growing sales and marketing library organized. So it's right there on your desk. You can pick that up if you ever need to know, excuse me, what are those image characteristics? You can pick that up and look it up at any time. And tons of advice on tools and techniques that get you much better results for much less money. So you get a package in the mail every month with the book. When you begin, you actually get a 1-inch binder, to keep all your stuff in and everything else. So how you get started is you go to www.abci1.com/class. And you can go ahead and open another window. This one won't shut on you, I don't think. If you open another tab or another window in your browser and go to www.abci1.com/class and fill out the little form. So this is risk-free. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee. There is no long-term contract. And if it's not for you, you lose nothing. But, as we mentioned, we're going to be rebranding the masterclass next month in June. So the bonus for right now is that in the next 15 minutes, if you sign up, you get a buddy pass. So basically 2 people in your organization can sign up for the price of 1, and you both get packages in the mail. You both get login information. You both get access to our archives. You both get access to our private Facebook group. You have to do your office hours together, but that's okay. You can both be on the line when you do your office hours and things like that. So we are going to stay on the line and answer questions about anything that you have or anything that you want to talk about, questions about the masterclass or questions about design or questions about marketing or anything else that you want to talk about.
Okay.
All right. So we had another question about video. How long should a video be, or how long is an effective video? And the answer to that is basically as long as it needs to be. I know there's a lot of statistics out there that say, people listen to the first, or they watch the first 20 seconds of video, but I would say you actually earn people's attention as you go along. So if you have a really fantastic first 20 seconds, you're going to earn their next 20 seconds and so on. So we like to do 2-minute segments. So, rather than having like talking heads for an entire hour or whatever, you want to think like a Sesame Street producer. A lot of people grew up in the age of Sesame Street, where they have an hour-long show, but they have these little 2-minute segments because they figured out that little kids have a 2-minute attention span. So you can make longer videos, but you want to put them, think in terms of how do we transition to the next bit of this video, and how do we make a difference in the music, or how do we make a difference in the visuals or something like that to get them from one phase to the next. So that is an excellent question. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Oh, question on how do you find a great graphic designer? That's a good one. Thank you for that. And one place, if you are not too particular, and most of us shouldn't be, I think, for a lot of the work that we do, there is a service called Fiverr, Fiverr. And Shane, I appreciate you telling me about this a while ago. I know this is one of your favorites as well, where you can post a job, or you can find graphic designers who will work for you for fairly inexpensively on things that you want to have done. Another one that we've done some really good work with in the past is a company called 99 Designs. And what I like about them is that they give you lots of different ideas. So if you're not really sure where you want to go for a visual or a logo or something like that, they'll give you lots of ideas. And then you don't have to worry about hurting anybody's feelings because they only give you one grand idea. And you're like, ooh, yuck, I hate that. And then you have to start over from scratch. This way you can take the best of a bunch of different ideas. It's usually not 99, but it's some number. And you can say, here are the 5 that I like best, and let's make more like these. And you actually have designers who are competing for that prize money, which is usually, I think, $2.99 is where that price point starts. So that is also a really good way to get really good professional design without paying a whole lot of money. Okay, does ABCI do websites? Yes, we absolutely do. And depending on what you mean by that, if you mean, redesigning a website, we can do that. If you want it translated from one technology to another, our tool of choice is WordPress. So in a lot of cases, we can take what you have and convert it to WordPress. That's what we call a website refresh. And we always make it mobile-friendly technology so that we're using a lot of those graphic elements and things like that are going to look really good on a big screen, on a small screen, and so on, so that you're making the best experience for your visitors. And then you're also able to take advantage of a lot of the advantages of WordPress, like search engine optimization, automatic RSS feeds, and other wonderful things. Great. So thank you for that. Other questions?
What is the best image or video size and resolution to use?
Okay, it used to be 640 by 480, but that was a million years ago, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And nobody ever thought it was going to be bigger than that on the internet because the internet was too slow for that sort of thing. So I would say, whenever you're producing video, you want to produce it as big as possible because, especially if you want to use it in the future, there's a lot of video that we've done in the past number of years that we like a lot, but we can't use it because we don't have the original video files anymore, and it's too small, for current technology. So, it would look better, bigger, but we don't have the ability to use it anymore. So I would say produce video as large as you possibly can. Then you can always create a version that's smaller, right? A smaller file size and a smaller frame size.
Does that apply to images as well?
Yes. Anytime we buy stock photography, and I think this is true pretty much across the board for many of the services we mentioned, they're pretty much the same price nowadays for any size. So you want to download the biggest picture you can and put that in your library, and then you want to make different sizes of that for the different services that you have. So, for example, you download a great stock photography, and then you're going to want to use it as big as you can make it on a postcard because you're going to print it at 300 dpi. But then you want to take that same image and you want to use it on a small social media post, and you're going to want to use that at 72 dpi, right? Because you want it to load fast and you want it to be quick and small and easy to deal with. So whenever you buy photography or graphic design or anything like that, you want the biggest vector image or highest resolution photography you can get, and then you can always make smaller ones. You can shrink it, but you can't stretch it, right?
Well, but oh, here we go. Somebody caught you.
Oh boy.
You're sounding too much like a techie, I think.
Oh, I got to be careful what I say. Okay.
So how do you resize pictures, images, or videos and videos? And how do you know what this DPI, this dots per inch thing, how do you know what size to make for where?
Okay. If you are using Photoshop, that's pretty simple. Well, it's not simple on Photoshop. Nothing is simple on Photoshop. But I would say use a tutorial for whatever tool you're using. And we like to use Photoshop for printed material, and we like to use Canva for online material. And they both have different tools for resizing things. In fact, Canva has a thing that they call Magic Resize, which will actually resize your images for all of the different social media. And you say, I want this for Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook and LinkedIn, and it will make 4 different images out of the same image for you in the ideal size and shape for each of those for those media.
So follow on. I take a video with my iPhone. how in the world do I resize it?
You use a video editor like iMovie.
Yeah, but
if you
that's
have
a Mac. What about the PC?
PC. What is it that we used on PC? We used Camtasia for a long time.
Yeah, we did. I don't know what to use now.
Yeah, I don't know what they use now. Any of you PC people, if you have a thought on what is the best movie editor or video editor on a PC, let us know. Maybe we don't have any PC people anymore. That would be good.
Here we go.
Okay.
Adobe's expensive, or Windows Movie Maker.
Or Windows Movie Maker. Okay. Yeah, those are good. I remember Adobe. That was fun. And that was a while ago when I had a PC. So, yeah, those are good. Question about the masterclass. Does the Buddy Pass include packages for both people? And the answer is yes. In the next 5 minutes, I might regret this. John's probably not going to be happy with me, but yes, in the next 5 minutes, you will both get the book of the month so that you don't have to share, and you'll both get the printed materials and the CDs and everything else. So yes, the answer is you do get the Buddy Pass. 2 individuals at the same address will send you 2 books, 2 packages, 2 everything. All right, another question about the masterclass. Is it guaranteed? And the answer is yes. So if you sign up today and you get the Buddy Pass and then you decide tomorrow your boss isn't going to improve the expense, then, of course, we'll refund what you paid us and so on. So you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So, whatever your circumstance, we totally understand. If you find that it's not for you, we'd rather not have you as an unhappy customer than to make you stick around. So that is absolutely true. Other questions?
Yeah, follow on to the images thing.
Yeah.
You talked about something called vector images. What is that?
Okay. Vector images is using a technology that lets you, and I'm not a graphic artist, so somebody can correct me or slap me around if this is not correct, but it's using a technology that will interpret what is needed to fill in the spaces. And this is usually used for fairly simple illustrations and other things. Anything that you get from 99 Designs or Graphic River or any graphic artist is usually done in what they call a vector format, like SVG or I'm not sure what the other vector formats are.
I have no idea.
But when you expand them, the computer will actually guess, if there's a curve or something like that, it will guess how to fill in the curve. So it remains smooth no matter how big you go, so it doesn't pixelate or break the image, right?
Which doesn't mean you can't get the perspective wrong, because you can stretch it the wrong way.
You're right, but as long as you keep it in proportion, you can stretch it as big as you want. So that's how you get those booth graphics on trade show booths.
Yes.
And big signs and big banners and things like that is with vector art or with very, very, very high resolution photography. Okay, good question. All right, another question about the masterclass. How much time does it take? It takes as much time as you put in, right? So we have people who will spend months at a time doing absolutely nothing in the masterclass, other than maybe checking in on the Facebook page every once in a while and saying hi. And then they, because they have a busy season for their charter service or, whatever the situation is. And then they do a lot of their marketing and makeup materials and things like that during the other months. So, and they find that to be really worth their time because it's flexible for them. So, they may put the book of the month on the shelf and never pick it up, never crack it until 3 months later. We're not going to embarrass them or anything else. It's really about how much do you want to be involved, and how much do you want to put into it. And the more you put in, the more you get out. The people who get the most out of the masterclass are usually the ones that are giving advice and getting advice, because you really learn something when you teach things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some of our members have met with our other members and put together some joint marketing projects, where they're going in on some materials that supports them both, if they have related but complementary businesses and things. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for flexibility and everything else. So don't be afraid to jump in. If you find that you are too busy and all of your materials are stacking up and things like that, you can always unsubscribe. But I would say if sales and marketing is your profession, you really do need to be reading at least one book a month. You really need to be putting in the time to learn something and to associate with other people in the profession, right, John?
Absolutely.
Right. There's a lot of other networking groups like BNI and others that have a minimum requirement. If you miss more than 2 meetings or whatever, you're out. But we know how busy people are, and that's why we have it online, so that some of our folks are out of the country for certain amounts of time and things, and so they can just chime in when they feel like it and when it's appropriate for them, right?
Yep.
Okay. Last question, and we'll answer this one. We're probably going to go over time, and that's okay. We'll leave the offer out there until we sign off. But question about colors. I'd mentioned that red tests really well as far as images and things like that. Are there any other rules about colors? And the answer, I think, of that would be you want to go with high contrast. So if you get a color wheel, and I'll include this in the show notes as well, a color wheel will tell you which colors are complementary to each other and which ones are opposite each other. So, if you have black and white are absolute opposites, and that is the most high contrast you can get. Blue and yellow are also very high contrast. So if they're across the wheel from each other, those are good combinations of colors to use. I wouldn't say that there are any good or bad colors, other than, I know I talked about pastels being probably not great for this audience, but I would say bright, high contrast, primary colors are probably your best bet for this demographic. But thank you for the question on colors. And
we're out of time.
We're out of time. So we'll end it there. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time.
You bet.
You're cool.